Blessed to be with you. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, KIDOTalkRadio.com, and the KIDO Talk Radio app. Thank you all for joining us. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And again, what do we hear when it comes to the media? They're looking to impeach the president. How about balancing the budget, right? How about worried about actually doing their jobs? Anyway, joining us now, Rich Noyes from the Media Research Center. We love talking to Rich and Dan and Brent and everybody else. We've been talking to them for years. And in fact, Rich, you've been doing talk radio so long, you probably know just about everybody in the country several times over. Good morning.
Morning, Kevin. How are you?
As I like to say to my friends and not to my friends, in this business, still employed. So that's always welcome. And you?
Still here.
Well, the work that you all do is just so needed now more than ever. When we think about just this war that the media continues to declare on the president, I thought their loving embrace of President Obama couldn't be topped, or their crusade against President Bush couldn't be topped, but that seems like nothing compared to what we see concerning coverage of Mr. Trump.
Yeah, well, they've gotten more partisan and more biased as the years have gone on. I think that's partly because their audiences have shrunk so much. They're really down to a liberal base of viewers or readers, and, they dare not cross their readers. But in terms of giving people what, the broad public expects from the news media, which is, sort of an objective, middle-of-the-road, fact-based summary of what's going on in the world, it's becoming less and less that and more just this perpetual resistance talk show that, is not having a whole lot of impact compared to, if you told me 10 or 15 years ago that a president or any national politician was going to have months and years of 90% negative coverage of, being the top story times 5 or 10 above all other things, I would say no politician could survive that. That is how careers get destroyed. And I would say President Trump has, I would say he's not exactly thrived with this. I think it's kept a cap on how his approval rating can grow, but it certainly hasn't eroded his support any at all either. People who were with him before he was elected understand the news media for what they are, and they understand what's going on, and they're basically sticking with him. I think the only real problem for the president because of all this is people who might be receptive to him because of the positive economic news, the victory over ISIS in the Middle East and things like that, achievements like that, are being stymied by the press. But, we'll have to see what happens when this becomes a two-person race instead of a referendum on the president.
Well, and this is why we love the Media Research Center. We use your sites all the time. We have you guys on and just the clips going on, but I love this, and just reiterating this, 838 minutes of airtime, nearly 14 hours, this is from June 1st to August 31st, to coverage of President Trump personally, 90% negative, as you just said, the same throughout his presidency, and yet his approval rating is competitive.
It is competitive, and one of the reasons is look at the people who might succeed him. We looked at just the evening news. I mean, that's it's the highest rated of all the news programs in the country, but it's still a small amount of time. It's something we can manage looking at the entire set of news. Joe Biden is the number 2 politician, 74 minutes in the same time. President Trump has 11 times more coverage, and this is not the administration. This is just Trump personally pulled out of the administration. It's what he's been doing since 2015. He's become this irresistible person for the media to cover, and they can't stop covering him. It's all negative, but it squeezes out the oxygen for anybody else to get traction and become known. I think one of the reasons Joe Biden is leading in the polls is he was well known before the Trump phenomenon took over. People like Kamala Harris, 30 minutes in this same time period. Pete Buttigieg, 15 minutes. A lot of these candidates, 1, 2, 3 minutes of coverage. They're just not getting any oxygen, and you can see it's hurting their candidacies. It's sort of frozen that race in where it is. We're having a debate tonight, but this is still, if you're watching the news on TV, this is still the Trump show, and the Democrats are bit players.
Right, and that's the fascinating part about this. We've got this big debate tonight, and And one of your sites, newsbusters.org, points out, and we've been talking about it here on KIDO Talk Radio, Rich, is here you've got old Stephanopoulos, who goes back to the Clinton years, and he's supposed to be the objective things. And Rich, I don't know, because it's your job, I don't know if you actually take Sundays off, but I watch all the shows, and it's softball city to a Democrat, but a Republican, mean old George, just lets him have it.
Yeah, and he's been doing that, when he worked for the Democratic campaign, and for Bill Clinton and other Democrats back in the 80s and 90s, and he's been doing that at ABC for years as he's moved from being a commentator. I remember when he was hired, he was a commentator paired with then conservative Bill Kristol, and there was, they understood he had a partisan point of view. Well, slowly he's morphed into this objective, never had a political bone in his body host of the Sunday show. He's filled in as anchor of World News. He's one of the co-hosts of Good Morning America. They act like he's been in the news business his whole life and not had that decade in politics where he was part of Bill Clinton's spin doctors trying to, influence media coverage to be more pro Bill Clinton. I mean, that was his job. He wasn't just an expert. He was somebody who was trying to manipulate the press from a campaign perspective. Now he's inside the media trying to tell it like it is, and clearly he has this axe to grind. The other big moderator at this debate is Jorge Ramos, who was the one thrown out of a Trump press conference in 2015. He woke up on election the morning after the election in 2016 and said his job was to resist. He's used his job as an anchor of Univision, which is a Spanish language network, to be as anti-Trump as anybody in the media. Well, he's gotten one of these the four question positions, asking the Democratic candidates questions. So I suspect if you see biased questions at tonight's debate, it's going to be pressing these candidates from the far left, not pressing them, to respond to conservative points of view.
Richard Noyes joining us from the Media Research Center. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Overall, what impact does this have on our republic where we have such a one-sided tilting the scales?
It's not good. I don't know if there's any way at this point it can be fixed. The whole idea of having a free and independent press at the beginning was that you wouldn't have politicians controlling the press. It wouldn't be tilted to sort of one side or the other. You did have a partisan press early on, but you had a partisan press on both sides, and you had newspapers, 2 or 3 or 4 in each city with different points of view. The idea that you'd have a press where the vast majority is still one point of view. You have Fox News and talk radio and things on the internet, but it is still largely a liberal bastion. I think that would have been anathema to the founders, and they would have hoped that market forces or just the First Amendment freedom would create alternatives. I mean, there's no rule against it. Having balanced press or conservative press that balances out the liberal press. But, the competitive problems of getting involved in the TV industry and having a broad audience, it's getting more and more difficult. And the media industry generally is having problems making money. They've got free competitors on the internet. So it's the best we can hope for, I think, is to have a truly competitive environment where you have liberal and conservative media each telling the story, and people will have to sort of spend time watching both sides to figure out what's really going on.
Rich, what should we be looking out for, in the coming months with this presidential race? 1 minute it's Bernie, the next minute it's Joe, Kamala. The media seems to have a rotating coronation of who's going to take down Trump. And just a second part of it, should we believe the polls that they all beat President Trump?
Well, I mean, they're beating President Trump in the polls now because none of them have had an effective campaign run against them. Nobody sort of talked about, what are the problems? I think if the media, you'll see sort of the media make choices. Some of the media will try to prop up Joe Biden and make it seem like he's ready for prime time, and he's not sort of past his due date when it comes to being a candidate. And those are the people that think that he is the only realistic alternative to beating President Trump by getting centrist voters. Then you'll have the eager leftists who are trying to prop up either Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders and make it seem like their views, their policy positions are intricate, involved, intellectual positions as opposed to crazy ideas that would actually hurt America. None of them are going to get sort of major scrutiny, but you'll see the media divide themselves between sort of the left-wing camp and the more centrist camp, and they'll each have to do some spinning to keep that going. And you'll have to see who the Democratic voters choose, and then there'll be a real campaign engaged. My guess is it'll be far more biased than what you had in 2016 when it was very anti-Trump, but not really pro-Hillary. You're going to see a lot of, particularly if it's one of the left-wing candidates, you're going to see a lot of hero worshiping coming down the pike over the next 11, 12 months as well.
Rich, finally here at KIDO Talk Radio, the coverage of guns.
Yeah. Look, the media have been on a crusade for years. They're not interested in the Second Amendment. They exploit every mass shooting as if the only solution is what they've been preaching for months and years, which is removing guns from the marketplace. Where I think we did a study after, I can't remember which shooting it was this year, but it was about 16-1 against gun rights in the coverage. That's twice as biased as it was after Sandy Hook, which was I think when the media sort of got the second wind of activism. It doesn't seem to be having an effect on the broader public. I mean, the public is nominally for some of these gun control measures because they don't see them as all that invasive, but they're not making it a voting issue either. But we'll have to see if that changes. If you had one of the Democratic candidates, Eric Swalwell, a congressman, made guns his number one priority when he was running for president. He was one of the first to drop out of the race. So it's so far it's not galvanizing real voters, in spite of the polls that show people are nominally signing on to those policies because I think all this media coverage.
Rich, we always appreciate you. Keep up with all those kids there. You got a good flock at the Media Research Center. We appreciate you, brother.
We do. They work really hard. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio.
Just the last comments made about me being appalling. And first of all, I served my country for 34 years. I saved many lives, and I ran an agency. Let's be frank in what ICE does. ICE last year took a season of opioids off the streets of this country that could have killed every man, woman, and child in the United States twice. They've arrested thousands of sexual predators that preyed on children. They rescued thousands of children who were victims of predators. They arrested hundreds of women who were victims of sex trafficking. I am proud of the agency and ICE. And what we don't want to talk about is nearly 90% of everybody ICE arrests for immigration violations either have a criminal history or are pending criminal charges when they were found. I mean, they were found in a county jail, which most likely means they weren't a choir boy. So to mismeasure what the work the men and women of ICE do is, I find appalling that a member of Congress would throw that out there like that. In my 34 years, I've never seen such hate toward a law enforcement agency in my life that you want to abolish them rather than doing your job and legislate. If they don't like it, legislate. You can't.
Mr. Homan, according to the rules of this committee,
of enacting laws.
Mr. Homan, your time is expired. The chair now recognizes Ms. Hill.
Folks, they actually have AOC chairing a committee. This was the House Oversight and Reform Subcommittee on Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. It was a hearing on the Medicaid Deferred Action for Critically Ill Children, and that was former ICE Director Larry Homan looking directly at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and talking about the hate that she and the squad and others have been, and the lies that they've been ginning up against the good law enforcement people of ICE. And as we've said before, none of us are perfect. But when we have a society, when we have lawmakers that vilify the good, hardworking people and their families of law enforcement, that we target them, Kamala Harris. We went through that with 8 years of Obama. This rhetoric has to stop. This garbage has to stop. Because without law enforcement, we see what happens. We see what happens in Arizona, where there's the sign, "Do not go here. We cannot keep you safe," because we have the narco-terrorists living freely in this country, doing whatever they want because we've handcuffed law enforcement. Now, you talk about a country controlled by the radical, crazy, wacky, zany, disruptive Democrats. Tlaib, Cortez, the gang, the squad, call them what you want. But do you want their ignorance being the prevailing thought in government? God bless the former acting director of ICE saying most of the criminals that we round up are in the county jail, which means they're not choir boys. And by the way, if the liberal media, if the liberal local media cared about the truth in this area, why don't we just start auditing our local jails? Wouldn't take much. Why don't we just start auditing how many people we have here illegally that we're paying for in the jail in Ada County, in Canyon County? By the way, this is a dead issue now, but God bless the Ada County commissioners. I'm being facetious here with getting that funding for the new DMV, getting that funding for the new jail or the expansion of the jail without getting approval from taxpayers. That sneaky, freaky little law that allows them to collect taxes that have been there but they've never used. That's what happens when you get rid of Republicans. That's what happens when you have squishy Republicans. That's what happens when we let our eye off the ball. That's what happens when we decide, hey, I'm just going to watch SportsCenter and chill out, man. I'm not happy about this. But the folks at Ada County, they know all about the bait and the switch. It's sad. It's troubling. We can do something on the local level. It's great to talk Washington. I love that. But locally, this is our chance. This is our opportunity. This is our stand. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, traffic and weather together. Good morning, Dave.
Mr. Homan, as a fellow American, I just want you to know your contribution as acting director of ICE under this administration will always be remembered as one that was very ruthless and inhumane treatment of asylum seekers. As the author of the separation policy and now of this sick, preventing people, sick children before this committee, seeking life-saving medical treatment. I will continue always, this is probably the third time I think you before this chamber, that I'm deeply troubled by your opening statement and continued assault on innocent lives. And I ask that this administration please stop playing politics with the lives of the children before this committee, but also with the lives of many Americans that are directly impacted by the continued broken immigration system in our country. Thank you so much.
Can I respond to that? Can I respond to that?
No, we're moving on to...
Alexander,
yes.
he was invoked. I would suggest he should at least be able to respond.
Okay, we'll give you...
See, this is what the devious, destructive, twisted, goofy, radical, tree-hugging libs do. Okay, we're going to smack you, but you're not allowed to respond. And there's no adults in the Democratic Party, right? Alexandria, he was mentioned. He needs to be allowed to respond. You heard his response. And, we talk about the critical children. Look, no one wants people in cages, but no one wants people breaking into your home. No one wants people taking your job. No one wants people seeing their culture, their language being taken away because people don't like this great country.
How do I not respond to that? Is this about transparency or not?
I'll claim that time.
Would you like your time? Okay. The chair will now. Chair now recognizes Mr. Roy for 5 minutes, and you can feel free to.
See, there we have it. They talk about fairness, open, and transparency, and obviously the barista, the bartender, the congresswoman doesn't know what she's doing. You may not like President Trump. You may think he's out there, but at least he stands up to those bullies. At least he stands up for America. Can you imagine 8 more? The sides have become so polarized, and not really our side. We're just trying to maintain what we've grown up with, the country that we love. The left has gone so much off the rails that we're going to see another war on police. Probably making Obama seem liberal, seem conservative. I mean, these folks have an agenda. And their agenda is open borders. Their agenda is to get rid of the immigration system, eliminate language, eliminate culture, and just death to America. Now, I'm sorry if that seems to go a little too far, but what else is there? I guess we can sit there and laugh and joke about it because, it's too early to get mad, but we just came off the, 18 years of 9/11? Law enforcement keeps us safe. And yet here you have members of Congress, in my opinion, acting irresponsibly. But your opinion is always welcome. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. The president earlier talking about gun control.
We're looking at background checks, and we're looking at putting everything together in a unified way so that we can have something that's meaningful.
Now more than ever, we need to support our rights that are being taken away by the government.
All of us want to protect our great Second Amendment. It's very important to all of us. So we are now in meetings. The meetings are going to go on tonight. I'm going to speak with them again tomorrow. And I think progress is being made. I hope so.
We'll see. Hopefully good progress and not gun-taking progress. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. Oh, the old days of polyester, when polyester was king, right?
We want to have parents understand that we're studying it very carefully. It's, again, very new and potentially very bad.
There we have it, the war on vaping. We'll get back to that. We started the program earlier on that. We'll take more of your phone calls. Max in Garden City, hang on. But you take a look at the agenda of Congress, and it's vilify law enforcement, let the illegals in, and, with this ICE hearing, this is crazy, and impeach the president. How in the world is that making us safer, right? How in the world is that really making us safer? We'll talk about that. And that'll be a big topic during the Democratic presidential debate. Joining us now from Houston, Texas, home of the old Houston Oilers. Houston's pretty big for the show. We had Tillman Fertitta, the owner of the Houston Rockets on, billionaire buyer, and we have Tanya J. Powers from Houston. Those are the two biggest names that I know of. That's like the power ranking times 10. Good morning.
Hey, I'll swap bank accounts with him. That sounds like fun.
Now, I don't know if they're talking more about this debate in Houston or the big showdown with Washington State. Your thoughts on being there live on the ground, of course. And again, you're a hard news person, but there's nothing like that powder keg, that anticipation of being at a big political event, is there?
Yeah, it's one of those buzzy kind of events. A lot of people are talking about it. If you go on social media, a lot of journalists are covering it. They're tweeting about it, that kind of thing. I have already talked to some of the folks here in Houston about what they think about it, and I've gotten, as you might imagine, a range of answers from everything from yes, I'm trying to go to the debate and I can't seem to find anybody who has a ticket, to there's a debate. So it sort of, as you would imagine, runs the gamut. But it seems like, a lot of people are closely watching these debates. It is still really early for them. But at the same time, I think, there are a lot of people to choose from if you're, a Democratic-leaning voter and you're trying to look at, all the policy stuff that has been rolled out by all of the candidates, because there are still a bunch of them. There will be 10 on the stage tonight. That is, of course, not all of them by any stretch, but those are the ones who have qualified for this particular debate. And this is the first time that we will see the three frontrunners on the stage at the same time, which is, of course, former Vice President Joe Biden, and you also have Senator Bernie Sanders and Senator Elizabeth Warren. They'll all be on stage together. So it'll be interesting to see if Warren and Sanders kind of team up on Biden, or, what's going to happen there.
It does seem like an unusual alliance, and a loving alliance where, Elizabeth, you say this, and then I can't do Elizabeth Warren's voice, can't even do Bernie Sanders' voice, but I'm no Larry David at that, but then she'll, little Bernie, you're a good Bernie. And they don't, it's almost like a team effort. And you just have to wonder if that will continue. And Joe Biden, Tanya J. Powers, our non-political expert, he's got to do well in one of these things, right?
Yes, you are right. I'm not a political expert. I'm a reporter. But yes, it does not take a political expert to know that he has to continue to do well in the polls, which means he needs to do well in the debates. I think from what the people were telling me that I spoke to yesterday, the ones that said they were going to watch this debate, they were looking at it closely. They said to see the nuances and the differences in the policy decisions and where these people stand on different issues. And they kept mentioning things like immigration and climate change. One woman told me she wanted to hear a lot about, the economy because she said she's about to retire and she is, concerned about, what the next candidate for, the Democratic Party is going to do about that. So there's like specific issues. It's not just we'll let them all narrow each other down and then I'll decide. These are folks who are, seem to be intently watching to see what the policy platforms are. But also they told me without a doubt, the ones that said that they were Democrats and that they were, interested in the debate, all of them said, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who even if their person is not the nominee, they will still vote for a Democrat. They will still go out and vote. It wasn't like if my person doesn't get it, I'm staying at home. That was not what they told me yesterday.
Well, and you have to wonder about the state of Texas. People are worried the it could go purple, could go blue, unthought of even 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you've got these these Republicans who now, several of them from Texas, say that they're not going to seek re-election. So that is something that is kind of another wrinkle in things. I'll tell you something else to watch for tonight. I think it'll be interesting to see Beto O'Rourke, the former Texas congressman, and Julian Castro kind of get in here because, again, this is Texas. So this is a big deal for them. It's a big deal for the ones who are polling at 2% to see if they can't increase their visibility. The next debate, ironically, is easier to get into than this one was because it has the same criteria to get into it as this one did. So you've automatically got 10 people that are going to be on the stage for the next debate. These 10 are coming back for that one, plus whoever qualifies between now and October 1st. So it could go back from the 10 on stage to another, 2-night debate with a different amount of people. That would not be surprising at all.
Tanya J. Powers, I wish I could wear my vintage Earl Campbell Houston Oilers jersey. And every time I think of Houston, Texas, this is so unrelatable. I have to share it with everyone. That old song, Love You Blue from the Houston Oilers, You're probably too young.
Are you going to sing a little bit for us?
No, please don't.
You're not going to sing?
No, please. That would not be good for anybody.
You'll dress up in a turkey outfit, but you won't sing the song?
My singing is that bad.
Okay. All right. I'll take your word for it.
See, that's why she is a hard news veteran reporter. She backs it up with those tough follow-up questions, people.
It's always good to be on with you, Kevin.
Tanya J. Powers, great having you. Take care, ma'am.
Thank you. You too.
Our great friend, Tanya J. Powers. Remember, when you hear Fox News on the radio, you're listening to KIDO Talk Radio, home of Max in Garden City, talking about the libs.
And the libs they are.
The libs are taking over. How do we stop them?
Well, I guess the first thing we have to do is get up and vote. Get off the couch, put down the remote control, get in the car, go to the school or wherever it is and vote. I'm thinking about this. How is it that the Democrats can be so quickly put into lockstep in areas that are insane? And I have a thought. Wouldn't you think that there is probably some core instigator, some organizer that's coordinating these people?
Look, they have an agenda. They hate law enforcement, and they're out to get us.
Okay, but it's not that simple. They hate law enforcement. They hate legal immigration. They hate free market principles. they hate freedom of speech. How is it that they all are so much in lockstep on what they hate? I would not be surprised if somebody were to look into their past, look into these people, and see what their ties are, either to China or to Russia. See what their ties
now you're
are.
taking it. Now you're taking it to another level.
Well,
I mean, are these
how did
people?
it get
Are
to
these
this
people?
level?
Are these people? Look, I just think they're misguided, or some would call stupid. On the other hand, like useful idiots. But if they're plants, that's a whole level I never saw.
Okay, all right. You're in your 50s, right?
Yes,
I'm in my 60s. We've been around. This is not the America we grew up in. Yet they are so organized in such an insanely stupid ranks. I honestly am beginning to believe. I wouldn't believe it before. Now I believe that a foreign intelligence service has to be behind this. They've made them big promises. Maybe you will be kings in our new kingdom. Maybe you will be little leaders in a new society. Is it that far-fetched? Is it that far out?
Wow.
Just a thought, my friend.
I just go back to useful idiots.
Useful, but useful to who? Useful perhaps to the Chinese communists, to the Russian communists.
Right. Huh.
That's entirely possible. The only other thing what is possible is at lunch date that you absolutely promised me. I heard you on the radio. Let's not do a Steve Welch routine. Let's make this happen.
Wow, throwing out liberal Steve.
Hey, I got to be all over the map to keep up with you, buddy.
Max, thank you.
All right, you take care.
All right, you as well. Max in Garden City. Phone number is 580-5436. 580-KIDO. That's what they call operator error on my part. Let's see if the Commodore 64 is awake. Oh, there we go. It works if I put the sound up. Now, this is what we love about this program, pure transparencies.
Drop my kid off and be scared to death that they use a drinking fountain, something we all took for granted when we grew up. That's pretty phenomenal. Again, it's not 1819. It's not even 1919. It's 2019. And we're talking about a $20 billion surplus. We're talking about being the fifth largest economy in the world, and we've got all this bravado and ingenuity and entrepreneurial spirit. We can't even provide basic drinking water to 1 million plus Californians.
Watch out for this guy. That is the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. We'll tell you what he's up to next, and hopefully it'll be shot down in the courts. Could impact a lot of schools and how they discipline kids. You'll want to hear it next with me, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. So this in California, I love this. This in California, Gavin Newsom, the governor there, very different from our governor, Brad Little, has signed a bill that will make it illegal in California for both public and charter schools to suspend disruptive students from kindergarten through the 8th grade. Signed the bill, Senate Bill 419, which permanently prohibits willful defiant suspensions in grades 4 and 5. It also bans suspensions in grades 6 through 8 for 5 years. The law goes into effect next July. Nancy Skinner of Berkeley, who wrote the law, said it would keep kids in school where they belong and where teachers and counselors can help them thrive. How many kids miss school in California? California students missed 150,000 days of school because suspensions for unruly behavior in 2016-2017, according to the California Senate. Now, and they're saying this is the best way to disrupt the school-to-prison pipeline. Liberals, progressives, civil rights activists cheered this bill. But look, there's a reason why so many people are moving from California to Idaho, Nevada, Texas, and other places. Now, I'm a big host country sensitivities kind of guy. In other words, when you come into the state of Idaho, you respect the Idaho way. Like me, I continue to learn the Idaho way. It'll take a while. Now, if you're a lib coming in and you want to turn this into Libville like they did to Colorado, well, that's an issue. But who in their right mind would say that this is a good policy Let's say it happened to your school. Let's say it happened to Timmy, Bimmy, and Mimmy, right? Timmy, Bimmy, and Wimmy. They're disruptive in class. In the old days, we all feared the phone call to mom, the phone call to dad. The progress reports, I'm getting flashbacks even as I speak to you, right? And then you'd have the educator say something to the parents, and the parents would take the educator at their words. Today, we have people that attack the educators. Well, such and such teacher, my kid can do no wrong. Man, that goes up to college. People tell me that teaching college, look, it's more like a customer service job. If I don't give these Generation Z, plurals, or whomever the right grade, I hear about it from mommy and daddy, and I get a bad review. Nobody likes a bad review. That does not help the economic pipeline, right? But think about this in school. How many kids were suspended? I think I was suspended once for fighting. Fighting Kevin Miller? Yeah, the guy hit me and I hit the ground, but we were both suspended. Suspended for disruptive behavior. Look, how many of your kids have been sent to the principal's office for exercising their First Amendment rights? Now, maybe some people will say, you know something, Kevin Miller? You don't suspend a 6th grader, a 7th grader, an 8th grader for disruptive behavior. This is a bad move, state of California. Thank God we live in Idaho. This is a bad move. I can remember being a teacher for a year. I can remember being a student teacher. I wasn't allowed to write up, give demerits, or anything. So the only way I could discipline kids is they got to spend their lunch hour with me. The guy who was my mentor teacher, he hated his job, hated his life, and counted the literal days till his retirement. And the kids knew it. Was not very nice to me. Whatever. You persevere. Not a good time. You adapt. You improvise. You do it for the kids. Right? But at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, not letting kids be suspended? What is wrong with Gavin Newsom? And how in the world are you going to teach? Look, I was running into a young person, not so young person. They were telling me about their family and about kids in the California school system. They've put in 20, 30 years, and they want to hurry up and get out, get their pension, and get out of that place. How in the world do you expect people to teach if you can't suspend? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave. So here we have it. Imagine if all of a sudden you know that you can't get suspended. Oh, Kevin Miller, we're talking about K through 8. Why don't they just do it in high school as well? Allow the disruptive malcontents to continue. You know, as a teacher, there was a dirty little secret. There was a dirty little secret, and maybe it's still prevalent in public education. And there are some people with legitimate learning disabilities. There are some people that have to be coded. There are some people that have to have additional work, right? God bless them. In fact, I still think it's controversial, the idea of mainstreaming, but our society is a better place for it. It really is. As long as those special needs kids get the attention that they need. But there's also a dark side to labeling. There's also a dark side to the lack of discipline. There's also a dark side to the disruptive nature. And we're talking about little kids. If you don't give the little kid the discipline as a little kid, how do you expect him to follow direction as an adult? Right? So what would happen is you would have Timmy, Flimmy, and Billy. And what they would do is they'd be disruptive. You'd send them to the principal's office. And what would happen next? Well, you couldn't discipline them. You couldn't talk to them because their parents, in their infinite wisdom, had labeled them a certain way. Now, again, if it's legitimate, I'm in favor of it. If the kid just didn't want to be disciplined, and when you have a disruptive kid in school, what happens? It messes up the entire class, right? The ability, and you take a look at the state of California, why in the world would the governor sign a bill? Government should get out of the education business, not dictate that you can't suspend kids. I believe in this. This is going to stop people going from the classroom to the prisons. Really? By not teaching discipline? The scary part about this is when you suspend some kids, their parents aren't home. The good parents, they're working 1, 2 jobs, to make a better life for their kids. The bad parents, well, they're out having a good time with Steve or Sally, right? We have to get rid of the fact that our kids in schools are a giant nursery center. School is supposed to augment the growth of a child, not be the primary driver of it, right? And on the soapbox today, on the right side, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Fox News next. Don't forget Glenn Beck later. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.